So yes, thank you. Happy Pride Month, everyone. Happy Pride in Education. If you don't already know who I am, you might have known me from the previous Pride in Education events, but I'm Ollie Pike, and I'm the director and CEO of Pop and Ollie. CEO meaning Chief Executive Unicorn, of course. What else could it mean? And Pop and Ollie is an LGBT plus edutainment resource used by children, parents, carers, and teachers across the UK and beyond to teach about equality and diversity, whilst ultimately helping to combat homo, bi, and transphobia before it can even begin. And we kind of do this in 3 ways. So we have tons of free videos over on our YouTube channel, and that's where it all kind of started. There's cartoons, inclusive, LGBT plus stories, there's educational videos about what does identity mean, what does love mean, what does sexuality mean. There's also historical videos over there as well, which you can use, videos about the history of Pride, the history of the rainbow flag. There's so much over there. Please go check it out. We also have books. We actually got 6 LGBT plus and equality inclusive books, and these all started as cartoons on the channel, and these are really great classroom resources as well, and super easy to use, and as I said, all available as free videos on the channel.
Ollie, could you possibly, you've just shown the books, but we've got blind people in the audience, could you read the title of your books and just describe the cover really briefly, please? Thank you.
So we've got Kenny Lives with Erica and Martina, and this is a story about a little boy who is about children kind of like changing the world, and that's a very colourful story, all to do with colour. We've got Prince Henry, which is a gay fairy tale romance story, and it's got 2 princes holding hand on the cover. We've got Goldilocks and the 5 Bear Families, and this is about Goldilocks, and she meets lots of different bear families around the village. There's 2 mummy polar bears on the front cover. There's lots of other types of families inside. We've got Jamie, which is my transgender Cinderella story. And on the front cover, we've got Jamie looking in a mirror at themselves. And then we've got Princess Penny and the Pea, which is about Penny, who is in a wheelchair. And this story isn't about Penny being in a wheelchair. She just is a princess, and it's more just about her. And then we've got the Prince and the Frog, which on the cover we've got a prince and his sister and a little frog as well. And this is about healthy relationships. And so what I want to do today, or that's just an example of some of our characters, is actually, rather than just tell you about our resources, I kind of want to give you an example of a lesson that you can do with our resources, so you can go away today and actually use this information that I've shared with you. So this is a Key Stage 1 lesson, and at this age group, so this is like 4, 5, 6, maybe 7. With this age group, I just think the most important thing is to teach about diversity and different families, and that all families are different, and that's okay. So this is what I have done. I've gone into classrooms and I've done this lesson. So what I do is I kind of gather all the kids together on the carpet or somewhere that they can sit comfortably, and I ask them, so what do families do? And the general feedback is they look after us, they feed us, they keep us safe, they help us to grow, they love us. Then what I do is I pair up the children and I get them to talk to each other, just say to each other, who's in your family, and give them a couple of minutes to do that. Then when they're ready, I ask for feedback, and I say, does anyone want to share with the class who is in their family? I get as many children to feedback as possible. I even sometimes share my own as well. And then I like to ask them, what did we notice? And hopefully everyone's family in the classroom will be different. People will have sisters, people might not, people will have brothers, aunties, uncles. People might have 2 houses where their families kind of split and they go between houses. So it's really nice for the children to be able to share how different their families are. And of course, share your own. If there's teaching assistants as well, they can maybe share. The more families you can talk about, the better. Then after that little exercise, I like to show the children some pictures. These are Pop and Ollie pictures available to members on our website, but you can use whatever you want. You don't have to use pictures. So these are all pictures of different types of families, lots of diverse families here, different family setups. But you can get your own pictures from from the internet of different types of families. If you've got visually impaired children, perhaps you could use like little figures, put them into groups and get the children to fill the different figures that are in different families. And during this exercise, the children will just observe these families. We won't really say anything about it. I just want them to observe them. Then after kind of like a few minutes of letting them experience that, I'll ask the children, so what did we just see? Lots of different families. Were they the same? No, they were different. Who was in each family? And now here's the key bit. There isn't just one correct answer. So a lot of the time, what I've noticed is that children will give a very typical answer. For example, this picture, we've got 2 adults and 3 children. When I ask the children, who's in this family? The kids will be like, oh, it's a mummy, a daddy, a brother, a sister, and a baby. I think the magic word is could. Yeah, it could be that, but what else could it be? This could also be an auntie and an uncle who look after their niece and nephew. It could be a carer or a foster parent who fosters some children. And it's really awesome to see the children's faces when you kind of give them this information. They're like, oh yeah. It's just really nice to give them more options and let them know that there are other options out there. So I kind of do this with every picture. When I get to a picture that is a same-sex couple, sometimes the children will be like, oh, that's 2 daddies and a child. And it's great because we just, yeah, you already know what's going on here. It kind of depends on the classroom and the school and what they've kind of seen before. Sometimes they'll say like, oh, that's like a daddy and an older brother and a little brother. And I'll be like, yeah, it could be that. Does anyone think any different? If no one suggests it, I will suggest that I think it's 2 daddies, and just let them know and reinforce that some families have 2 daddies, some families have 2 mummies. Then kind of after you've gone through all the pictures or the little dolls or whatever you're using, I asked them, what did we notice? Were the pictures all the same? No, they were different. Were they all families? Yes, families can be different. So that's a super easy, quick lesson idea that you can do with the little ones. Then what you can do following that lesson is you can use this story, Goldilocks and the 5 Bear Families. This is available for free as an animated video on our YouTube channel, or available as the book. And as I mentioned, it's just about Goldilocks meeting lots of different families, 2 daddy panda bears, loads of koala bears. It's really fun and kind of silly, and the kids really seem to enjoy it. How much time have I got left? I've got like 2 minutes. We have follow-up resources available to go alongside this story as well. Some of these are actually available for free at the moment in our free resources area, so make sure you go check them out as well. And then, so this is kind of like a key stage 2 lesson. I don't think I'm going to have that time to go all the way through it in detail, but I'm going to kind of skim through it. So Prince Henry, this can be enjoyed by a key stage 1 class because, you know, it's another type of family. It's a different family setup. So you can just read it as a family, as a class about families. But what I think is really good with the older children, like year 5 and 6, is to explore how this book relates to our real world. Because this book is about laws and rules and how they can change. So what I'll do is, if anyone wants a copy of this PDF, it kind of lists the lesson plans. If you send me an email at info@popandolly, I'm happy to send this PDF over to you. And then you can have a copy of the lesson plan. So a lesson that I do with this story is about laws and rules. In this story, as I mentioned, the law changes because Prince Henry wants to marry his friend Thomas, but his mum and dad, the king and queen, are like, no, you can't do that. You have to marry another prince or princess. If you marry Thomas, he's too poor for you. It's against the law of our land. And then, spoiler alert, the law ends up changing and they end up getting married, and it's happily ever after. But what I kind of like to get the children to do is think about, have there been laws or rules in our world which haven't been fair, which have discriminated against people maybe in the past? And what has happened in order to change them rules? So you can look at things like women's rights, racial inequality, same-sex marriage. How did these real laws change? You can explore figures, groups who campaigned for significant change and to help make our world a fairer place. I have loads of follow-up activities as well to go alongside this. That's my timer going off. I've run out of time. which you can find at popandolly.com. Again, there's tons of videos you can use easy in the classroom. The books, all these books, you can get 25% off with the promo code PRIDE21 at popandolly.com/shop. Classroom resources on the website, free resources. And finally, I have a new book coming out, and this is going to be so helpful for primary school teachers. It's called What Does LGBT Plus Mean? And it explains so much on a kind of like introductory basis. What's identity? What's sexuality? What's privilege? You can get this discounted at the moment in the shop, and also a lot of the chapters are already available as videos on our YouTube channel. So please check that out. And I've run out of time, but thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. People seem to be loving your resources. Ollie, a lot of really positive comments. I've put all the link to your shop and to your YouTube channel in the chat, and it will be emailed to all the delegates over the 3 days. We have over 1,000 people registered. And if people want to join, and you know anyone who's interested, you don't need to register anymore. Just click on the program and join the Zoom link. I've created a popcorn style so people can come in and out as they want. So the first question is from Fliss for you, Ollie. And the question is, have you worked with religious schools? Have you got any experience? Yeah,
I have visited religious schools. I visited Christian schools, and all I'm going to say is it has to do with whoever's in charge of that school. You might have a head teacher who's super on board with all elements of equality, and there's some teachers that aren't. It's nothing really to do with religion. I'd say it's down to individuals who are in charge of that school. I don't think we can just box religious schools as being something we shouldn't touch, because that's definitely not the case, and that's not what I've experienced. There's some religious schools out there who are really embracing this.
Thank you. Greg McGuinness has got a question in the Q&A, and you can type your answer if you are able to. And we can see at the end if you've got a little bit more time to respond to the questions. Are you able to access the Q&A, Ollie?
Yeah, yeah, I can do some typing in that.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much. So the next person I'd like to welcome is Dylan. Dylan, welcome, and thank you very much. So would you like to introduce yourself and tell us about the new resources that you've got from your organization?
Thanks, Leila. You're looking really glamorous there with that beautiful backdrop. Really lovely.
It's the progress flag, and it was designed by Valentino, who's the executive director of Intersex Equality Rights UK, on their board of trustees. And it's the flag that includes people with intersex variation.
It's really beautiful, and you look glamorous as well. Hey, I'm Dylan. I'm a director of a children's literature development agency. We're called Pop-Up Projects. We've been around 10 years. We run education programs in schools, literature and education programs in schools. We do talent development, so we develop emerging, aspiring writers and illustrators, and we help them into the publishing industry. And we do community projects where we work with marginalized groups to make stories, so refugee projects, children with disabilities, and also LGBT community. How long have I got, Leila? Is it?
Leila, 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Yeah, we've just published our first set of books, actually, to celebrate our 10th birthday this year. It's called 10 Stories to Make a Difference. It's 10 stories all in the same format. They're kind of A5 hardback, really beautiful editions. And each one of them has a writer and an illustrator. Each pairing has an unknown writer or illustrator. So it's their debut book, working with a well-known writer or illustrator who's basically supporting that emerging author to publish for the first time. And the theme of these stories is difference, and writers were able to kind of interpret the theme in whatever way they chose, but we made a real emphasis, and we want characters of color, LGBT plus characters, and characters with disabilities throughout the collection. So I'm actually going to show you 3 of these books and just tell a little bit of the story, and just pretty much leave it there, because we've just got the 5 minutes. Do I just share the screen here?
Yes, Dylan, please. Yeah, thank you.
Google Chrome, there we go. Okay. Can you all see this?
Yeah, if you could please describe what is in the picture. We've got
Sure,
blind people
yeah.
in the audience. Thank you.
Yeah. So the first book, we've got three books that are LGBT plus inclusive. The first is called A Match for a Mermaid. On the cover, you have two mermaids and a merman. And this is by a young writer. She's Eleanor Cullen. She's under 26. And she submitted this as part of a writing competition. She's queer herself. And it's illustrated by David Roberts, who is a very famous illustrator, illustrated a series of books by Julian Clary. It's published by lots of publishers. And it's basically the story of, it's a traditional tale, and I'll talk about the pictures in a second. It's a traditional tale about a mermaid princess called Malu, who it's time for her to find a suitor, and a string of eligible mermen from across the sea introduce themselves, and she rejects them one by one. And at the end of the story, having rejected all of these men, she turns to her best friend, Brooke, and declares that she wants to marry her. So you have this lovely twist at the end of a very traditional tale with a same-sex wedding at the end of it. And the illustrations by David Roberts, one of my favorite illustrators. I'll zoom in a little bit, sorry, it's probably not seeing that very well. In David's illustrations, which are full of these very quirky looking, odd, strange, and very queer looking mermen in this world under the sea, what David has done to this very, very simple tale is what I would call queer world building, in that he's created this kind of seascape where it's a girl looking for a husband, but you can see in lots of these characters that any sexuality and gender is possible in this seascape. So there are lots of what I would call queer characters in here throughout it. So he's taken this story that is essentially a lesbian romance and created the world in which that is not just remarkable or extraordinary, it's normal. It's a really beautiful little fairy tale. It's for ages 5 and up. I'm going to go to the next story, which is it's called Here Be Monsters. This is for age 7 up. It's by a really accomplished poet, writer, Jay Hume. Jay is transgender. This is, I think, Jay's 3rd book. He published his first book with us some time ago. And it's illustrated by an Iranian-British illustrator called Saha Hagu, this is her debut book. She trained with us as part of our talent programs. And in this story, it's another seascape story. So we're back underwater. It's the tale of an egg, a dragon's egg, that falls into the sea. It's told as a poem. It's what Jay describes as a mini epic narrative. This dragon's egg rolls into the sea, and out of the egg hatches a little dragon, born into this very strange, wild underwater world where she doesn't ever quite feel that she belongs, and she grows and grows and grows, and the pictures show her getting bigger and bigger. And the illustration actually is very inspired by Iranian miniatures, so there's quite a lot of reference to Iranian illustrations throughout this. And this is one of my things where I kind of go, real diversity is magic. You bring a transgender writer and an Iranian British illustrator to come together, and they come up with something truly, truly remarkable and extraordinary. And this dragon scares the sailors, and they hunt her down all over the sea. She becomes a monster, but she feels this terrible loneliness in the sea. No other creature is like her. It's a really, really beautiful, heartrending story. And then one day she's out of the water and a sky dragon appears to her, and the dragon is her mother, and she realizes that she was born in the air and belongs in the air and doesn't belong in the sea. And so she goes through this transformation and becomes happy and discovers who she really is. The dragon illustrations are not traditional dragons. We've definitely got a fusion of sort of dragonflies and other cultural interpretations of dragons. It's really richly illustrated, bright, vivid colors. And the whole story is, as Jay himself says, a massive trans allegory, but it can be read in so many other ways. It's really important that children know that that's what this story is about, but equally it is a story about finding yourself and accepting yourself, and becoming who you really are. Last book. I got time, Layla?
Yeah, really quickly, if you don't mind.
Yeah. This is illustrated by Chris.
I think you've given the whole story. Maybe we need people to be wanting more, so don't.
Okay, all right. This is the story. It's illustrated by Chris Riddell, who was the last Children's Laureate. Most people will know him. Debut writer again, young woman in American. It's the story of a boy called Indigo who is struggling with a secret, and the secret is his sexuality. And it's represented throughout the story in these illustrations as a dragon, another dragon in our story. And the dragon is symbiotic, it's growing alongside his body, and it's getting bigger and bigger, and he tries to defeat this dragon. He's trying to keep it secret from everybody he knows. It becomes this huge burden, and the illustrations are showing this growing dragon as you go through the story. And everything is about him finding the courage to tell his family and his friends about this great, big, ferocious secret, which is his sexuality. And when he does tell his secret, he's liberated everybody. It turns out everybody loves him just the same. It's a really beautiful story. It's there to hold the hand of somebody, any child really, who may be struggling to come to terms with something in their lives. It doesn't just have to be sexuality, but once again, it's really important, I think, in children's books, particularly where LGBT plus people are largely invisible, that we do tell children that this is essentially the basis of the story. These three books are all available to buy on our pop-up shop. I can put that in the chat now. And they just arrived this week, so they're now available to buy and to order.
Thank you, Dylan. A lot of really positive comments about the books. I think it very much addresses a need and a gap in the market. And I think we can never have enough of these books, because growing up, we didn't have them. So the more we have, the better. How well have these publications been received, i.e. reviews, both by book reviewers and peer reviews by academics, and what have the sales figures been? I think they've only just been released, Dylan, haven't they? So I think it's too early to tell.
They have. We pre-sold about 2,000. This is 3 out of 10 so far, but we've actually been asked to do another bigger print run because there's big demand in the retail industry. Reviews are just about to go out, but we need as much advocacy, particularly on social media. It's hashtag 10 stories to make a difference. And we'll be doing a big campaign around these 3 books in the coming weeks to actually reach grassroots communities. I want parents, I want LGBT plus parents to be able to get their hands on. It's a very limited edition. So, we really want them to be with the community as much as with schools.
Thank you so much. We might have more time for question at the end, but yeah, fantastic resources, as always, Dylan, as always. And they were featured in the Pride in Education newsletter 2 months on a row, so I'm really plugging. And if anybody wants to plug their resources, I always amplify other people's voices, because that's the way to do it. Faye, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us. So would you like to introduce yourself? You're from Twinkle, and Twinkle is actually giving access to all of their resources for free for 1 month. You normally have to pay for their resources, and for the Pride in Education conference, they've given them away for free. I'm just totally blown away. So without further ado, Faye, welcome and thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Lila. I'm Faye Booth. My pronouns are she, her. I am a teacher by trade, 20 years in primary school teaching, but for the last just over 4 years, I've worked for Twinkle. We're an online educational publishing company, growing and growing. We're now sort of all over the world, and our resources are translated into many different languages. Growing all the time. We are creating resources for primary education and secondary education. I'll be focusing on primary today, but also for nurseries, for home educators, and there's all sorts of different products popping up all the time on our site. Yes, our resources, not all of them are paid for. We have lots of free resources on the website, but some of our products and certain resources are paid for subscription products, different levels of subscriptions. But for our delegates today, and we'll share it at the end, and I know you've shared it via other means, Lila, we do have a code for all our people who've been attending the conference, so that they can access lots of the normally paid for resources and get them in the classrooms. So yeah, let me screen share and tell you a little bit about Twinkle. And I know time is limited, but we'd love to share some of our resources, and we'd like to get them out into the classrooms, basically. So sorry, bear with me. I will try to locate my, oh, it's because I've got this bar in the way. How do I get that out? Sorry, I've got a bar blocking the thing I want to show. Any ideas, Lila?
So what do you see?
I have a big black Zoom bar at the top of my screen that I'd like to not see, so that I can.
So let's start again. Have you got the resources open on your desktop?
Yes.
Okay.
But
and then click on share screen.
It's behind the bar. I just need this Zoom black bar to move.
Have you got the chat open?
I'm dragging it down. Okay. So there we go.
Yes,
there we
perfect.
go.
Thank you.
Okay. The wonders of technology. I knew that something would catch me out. So let me see if I can.
Yeah, perfect. We can see it clearly. Thank you, Faye.
Yeah, except it's not moving slides. Oh, I've got to go backwards. Okay. Bear with me, guys. So Twinkle, here are our missions, and I hope that this also links very much to today, because we want to lead the way, make a difference. We're trying to make sure we can help others and give teachers resources that they can feel really confident in using, especially when it comes to sensitive or potentially controversial topics. We want people to trust our resources, depend on them, and we're all about positive, inclusive, diverse resources, and making it fun and engaging. So on the screen will be an animation while I'm talking, so some different sort of a showcase of some of our resources will be coming up. So I won't be able to describe each and every one of those, but they're all linked to diversity, inclusion and belonging. And I think the big message from us is that we really want, through all our resources, not just the PSHE ones that I create in my team, and the ones linked to the RSHE curriculum and the LGBTQ+ community, but we want children to be able to see themselves, their families, their friends, their communities in all of the resources. So whether that's through the illustrations we're using, or a story that happens to have a same-sex couple or same-sex parents in it, or a maths question that happens to mention a child but uses the pronoun they rather than he or she. We want it we want our resources to be very representative all the time. So this one that's at the end showing here, for example, is a resource pack from International Women's Day, but one of the women in that pack was Angela Morley, who's a musician and composer who was also a trans woman. So it's about bringing the LGBTQ+ community into all the resources and all of the curriculum, whole school, not just those standalone lessons. However, thinking about LGBT and the relationship, sex and health education, which is now statutory, well, relationships and health education for primary is statutory now, and thinking about how we can really teach that through that curriculum, we need to look at the government guidance, and we can see that they have certainly included the fact that this should be taught, and following the Equality Act as well, that all schools must do that. Schools are able to decide how they're going to implement this teaching, but it is crucial that it's not taught as standalone lessons, and that's something that a really good quality spiral curriculum is going to help with, as well as ensuring, like we said, all those cross-curricular links and making sure that the resources you're using all the time are as inclusive and representative as possible. Some of the looking at different families, lots about respect for ourselves and others, the stereotypes and the types of bullying, which of course we have to make sure we really bring into our curriculum, so that we are focusing on those gender stereotypes, for example, and homophobic, transphobic, biphobic bullying as one of the types of bullying. So we're covering those. However, the PSHE association objectives, which we at Twinkle follow for our PSHE scheme, they really drill down a bit more, and that's fantastic because schools can feel confident in teaching these objectives through their RSHE curriculum. And these objectives really do address the fact that, for example, some people, the gender they identify with doesn't correspond with their biological sex, and that people may be attracted to someone emotionally, romantically, or sexually, and that person could be the same sex or different sex from them, and explaining that gender identity and sexual orientation are not the same as each other. Again, there's talk about objectives focusing on diversity and stereotypes, but not just learning about stereotypes. It's important that we also teach children the negative impact stereotypes can have and how to challenge those stereotypes, and also about prejudice. So one of the objectives there is to teach about what prejudice looks like, and crucially, how to respond to it and challenge it if it's witnessed or experienced. So again, we have lots of resources on our site that we hope will support teaching LGBTQ+ through RSHE, about diversity, about HBT bullying. Part of the party, one of the stories that flashed up on the screen is an ebook for Key Stage 1 predominantly, but anyone would enjoy it. Very much like you were saying, Ollie, we believe celebrating and exploring different family structures is really important for younger children. That's such a great starting place. And that's a story where we meet a koala and her family setup and all her friends and their very different family structures. So our actual PSHE scheme of work is a whole school spiral curriculum. This really helps teachers to get round that let's not teach the standalone one-off lesson in Pride Month. We want teachers to feel confident that they can deliver a curriculum that keeps revisiting issues of different relationships, different families, different genders and their stereotypes, different identities, celebrating that diversity and really talking about what it means to be inclusive, what belonging means to a community, and how we can do things like challenge certain ideas or prejudices, and look at rules that are in place and language that can be used positively or sadly negatively. We've also on site got an LGBT+ inclusive education best practice guide, which we made a few years ago in partnership with Stonewall, and that's been useful for a lot of people. We've got, oh, I stopped screen sharing. Did you stop it, Lila? Did you?
I'm really sorry. Time's up, Faye, because Mama G, and then we've got an international panel.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, we've got our code. It's capital letters Twinkle Pride. If you sign up before the 7th of July, we'd love for people to have a look at the site. And if you just type in Pride or LGBT or the word gay. So many resources will come up for you to explore and hopefully use in your classroom. Pride Month's a great place to start, but don't only teach it during Pride Month. Please keep teaching these important things all year round. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. You're actually running a workshop later, Faye. Do you want to tell us about your workshop?
Yes, so with my twinkle hat off later and my ally hat and parent of a trans son hat on, this afternoon we'll be looking at some resources, again primary and secondary, so there'll be two breakout groups, and having a think about what we would find useful and what we could use in the classroom. And the particular resources we've got to look at are actually from Pearson, just to talk a little bit more about what's useful, what people are already using and what people would like more of.
Thank you. Yeah, we had the Vice President of Pearson yesterday as one of the keynotes, and they're looking at redesigning their resources. They've already got a guide which they co-wrote with Stonewall, and it's a guide for LGBTQ plus inclusion in primary and a guide for secondary. So there'll be 2 breakout rooms, and if you're a primary teacher, go to the primary, and the secondary, go to the secondary. And then there's a survey with 2 questions. What do you like? How can it be made better? That will be sent back to Pearson. And we're on our way to queer the world, people. I'm just so, what I'd like to say before I bring in Mama G is like, I can't think of the adjective. I think it's absolutely brilliant to see all of the resources available when I'm 53. So if you think about 20, 30 years ago, we had absolutely nothing. So to see the wealth of resources, I mean, Ollie, you are phenomenal. Like, you're so active. I don't know when you sleep, because you're constantly, honestly, you're just, so yeah, when people are commenting really positively. So Mama G, how would you describe yourself?
I would describe myself as fabulous, Lila. Thank you very much for asking. In terms of what I'm wearing, if you are not able to see me, I have a big wig on. A big dress on with really puffed up shoulders, and I'm wearing a rainbow flag apron, a rainbow collar. I've got a lovely little pearl necklace. It's a fake one though, not real pearls, so I'm not that rich yet. My name is Mama G, and I am a year-round pantomime dame. If you're not familiar with pantomime, it's a tradition that happens here in the UK, nominally at Christmas, but I'm campaigning against that. And it's where fairy tales get retold for children, well, families really. And it's not just mime. There's lots of shouting out and joining in and sequins and sparkles. And the best character of all is the pantomime dame, which is traditionally a male actor playing a female role, which is where I find myself now. And which is why I insisted on joining this panel, because the rest of the year I go around schools, libraries, nurseries, museums, pride festivals, any other festival, anywhere that'll pay me, quite frankly. Do birthday parties if you'll ask. I don't enjoy them, but I do them. Telling stories about being who you want and loving who you are. And obviously a lot of those stories have a really strong LGBT angle. And I work for a company called Petite Pantos, who also put on pantomimes with a social conscience. So our pantomimes, which we've done for all families, are not adult only, they're for everyone, have covered Windrush, Brexit. We've had LGBT songs from LGBT artists as a soundtrack. And once we even made the baddie quote Donald Trump verbatim, and it was far too easy to do. But let's talk about me, because that's why I'm here and how I can help ever so slightly. So I started telling stories about 3 years ago. And when I was little, I was quite a belligerent person. So I never realized that people may not like me because of how I like to dress or what I like to wear. I just didn't notice. And then as I grew up, I started to become a little bit more aware of it, but no more so than when I just started telling stories about boys falling in love with boys and horses who were actually unicorns and dinosaurs that wanted to make hats and, you know, etc. And then I realized that actually there was still quite a lot of phobia towards gay people and trans people and, well, the whole rainbow, let's be honest. So what had started as something that I thought would be rather fun and a nice way to occupy myself when it wasn't panto season became a way to lead a crusade to make sure that people hear these stories, and that, like everyone else has said already, to make sure that children see themselves represented in the stories. And I'm actually not just talking about LGBTQIA plus children, I'm talking about every child, because the fundamental thing is that every child deserves to be recognized and deserves to be valued and deserves to be understood. And the big problem we have at the moment, that a large number of the people who are already valued and understood, actually, if we think about it, make up a minority of our society. So a lot of the problems, I think, stem from the fact that a majority of the world doesn't feel represented. So I try and empower everyone, because I think if we can empower one child to love themselves, then we're also giving them the ability to love other people who they might consider different or not the same as them. And that's also a really key word that I use in everything I do, is really, we've just got to love each other, because love is the most valuable thing we have. And I know that's might be a bit namby-pamby to some of you, but that's what I believe. It's important that we love every single person. So I write my own stories. I perform the stories more than I make them a resource or a publish. But I will tell you, I do have a book, which is called The Fairies Fran and Vera, and is based on the pantomime trope of a goodie and a baddie. It's based on a story called Mother Goose, actually. This is Fran, she's the good fairy and she just loves everyone. This is Vera, who's the bad fairy, and she thinks that love is just for boys and girls to share. And you can imagine that by the end of the story, she thinks quite the opposite. Now, let me just check the time. We are running out of time, so I shall wrap this up. But if you'd like to find out more, I just gabbled on, didn't I? Lucky I can't screen share, otherwise we'd have been here for ages. If you'd like to find out more, you can find me at Mama G Stories on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Also, the website for Petite Pantos is petitepantos.com, and I am available for in-person bookings and via Zoom. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And I have to say, your makeup looks phenomenal. Like the bright blue on your eyes is absolutely brilliant. I have put the link to Petite Pantos in the chat, and all of the delegates will be emailed all of the resources. So thank you. Somebody said you brought the sunshine to this conference, so that was brilliant.
Oh, my pleasure.
I think, so my name is Lila, like the color lilac without the C. We've got a question from Fliss, which I'd like to put to Ollie. How do you foresee schools moving away from awareness days that are, of course, hugely important to awareness in the everyday? Is there a scope for it in the current curriculum, or will it require national level overall of education provision? That's quite a big question. Faye's typing her response, but Ollie.
I was struggling to type in the Q&A, so I've actually put something in the chat, but I was just sort of, sorry to jump in, Ollie. I was just saying about really it is that representation. So sharing those stories like Ollie's or like some of the ones we have on our site, bringing in those LGBTQ plus people into other areas of the curriculum. So you are looking at sports people, musicians, artists from the LGBT community, and there is scope in the curriculum now with PSHE, because we have to teach those statutory objectives for relationships education. We can and have to cover different families, respect for others who are different from us, what loving and belonging means, whatever that looks like. And yes, we do have that scope to teach that in the curriculum now.
Oops, sorry, I'm not sure what happened. Sorry, Faye. Ollie, I think it's about intersectionality. Do you want to unmute yourself and give us your...
Should I just answer that question as well? With regards to awareness days, I think Faye touched on this, and it's like, we don't just want to do the LGBT plus content in Pride Month or LGBT plus History Month. We want it to be wrapped into the whole curriculum, the whole year round, in maths, in history, in art, in every part, as well as with kind of every single awareness days, not just LGBT plus ones. However, every school is unique and different. Every teacher is going to be in a different place and have different competence levels. Sometimes these awareness days are good places to start for some teachers, because it's like, it's Pride Month, this means that. So it's very individual, and it comes down to every teacher and your teaching style. If you want to use the awareness days and months as springboards, then go for it. I don't think there's a wrong answer here. Do what's right for you and for your class.
And I would add that I think we need to look at it from an intersectional point of view and move away from silo, so we can celebrate being queer during Black History Month, Refugee Week, Disability Week. And I'm hoping that one day everyone will feel safe and celebrated, so that we don't need to have these visibility days. But I think looking at it from the intersectional lens and making sure everyone is included in whatever celebration one is doing will slowly help. So we've just gone over by 3 minutes, and I was looking for our international panelists. I could only find one. I've emailed them, but Ariana, who's in Mexico, actually sent me a video because she had some problems with her internet connection. So I think we'll be all right. Mama G, did you ever watch Ms. Doubtfire? Because you remind me of her by your energy and love, Sabrina said. So it's just a yes/no question.
Yes, I have seen Mrs. Doubtfire, but very quickly, Anne Fine, who wrote Mrs. Doubtfire, actually wrote a book called Bill's New Frock, which I was read as a year 5 student about 25 years ago, and had a very big influence on me and is always near me. So do read this book if you've not come across it.
Thank you for showing us the cover of the book. What is it called?
It's called Bill's New Frock, and the cover is green and has a football pitch on it, because Bill plays football until the day he wakes up in a dress.
Oh, Chris, I've seen you. Okay. Okay, perfect, excellent. Right, Dylan, final words. Thank you so much for joining us despite everything. I mean, I have to say, trying to organize a global conference in the middle of a pandemic on Pride Day has been probably one of the most challenging things that I've ever had to do. But first, I was afraid. I was petrified. I have survived. Dylan, final words.
Oh, on inclusive teaching.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think I come from a point of view of the art form and the arts and literature in particular, and it is that, you know, use inclusive literature wherever you can. It shouldn't be there to it doesn't need to be there to discuss topics or address issues. I think it's really important that we build for children a world that represents the world, and you should do that in all of your teaching. And of course, yes, Pride Day and LGBT History Month, etc., etc. But I'm in favour of building inclusive stories into every aspect of teaching and learning.
Thank you very much. Ollie, words of wisdom.
I know, I was just doing a thumbs up, like totally agree with what you say, Dylan. Like, yeah, 100%.
Thank you so very much. So I'm just promoting you back to attendee. Faye, thank you so much. You've been so helpful, really. And I hope your workshop gets well attended. Do we know how many people have registered yet?
We haven't got that many so on my last check before we joined here, but if there are people from this workshop, obviously, or this panel who think they'd find that helpful, because obviously it's linked to primary education, some of it for the people who are here, then do come along, because there's probably a lot more we could do when we put our great minds together.
And it's not a webinar, it's a Zoom meeting, so everybody can see each other and ask
All
questions.
it's
It's very, very interactive. Thank you so much. I'm going to bring you back down as an attendee. Mama G, how fabulous to have you. What an honor. I think it's nice to have a variety and to show that you can use books, you can bring people in libraries and classrooms, and there's different ways to do it, and it all works, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I think genuinely that the advantage to what I can do is that I can go into any space. So education happens wherever I turn up, be that a museum, a bookshop, a school, or a playing field. Everybody can learn more about the world and about themselves wherever they are. And I hope that I can encourage that in them.
Thank you so very, very much. And I'm going to bring you back down to the audience if that's okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.